Welcome to Slacker Sports Show.
Good evening, sports fans, and welcome back to another podcast episode of Slacker Sports Show, where we discuss anything and everything you need to know about sports. Let's welcome in the co-host of the podcast, Mark. How you doing, Mark?
Doing pretty well. Sports world's kind of winding down. I mean, NBA's over, MLB just got over. What was that, last night? So NFL's kind of taking center stage, but still a lot of news from all the leagues to talk about. So we got plenty to talk about today.
Yeah, and so kind of throughout the season, we'll switch stuff. So right now we're going to finish up with the NBA. We're going to talk about the MLB and then talk about the NFL. And then, since MLB and NBA are kind of over now, we'll kind of move our focus to other stuff like NCAA football. NCAA basketball is going to start getting started in the next month or so. NBA, again, is right around the corner. So we'll kind of bring in whatever is kind of popular and stuff and kind of continue that way. So if just because we're not doing just because NBA and MLB are over doesn't mean that we're going to run out of stuff to talk about, because sports are something you can talk about all year long, which is great. All right, so the NBA, we're going to talk about the free agents, because I feel like NBA is getting ready to start up again soon, and there's a lot of free agents that could be moving around and make a huge impact on several teams. And I think the biggest one to talk about, it would probably be Anthony Davis, and that's just because he was such a huge part in that LA championship. And so it'll be interesting to see if he comes back, and I haven't really heard anything whether or not he is or isn't, or what that's going on about, but pretty much Anthony Davis is kind of the headliner. There's a few other people that we could talk about as well, but the biggest one to talk about right now is Anthony Davis. But let's talk about the start of the season coming, and I'm going to send it over to you, Mark, because you know more about NBA than I do.
Yeah, there's been a couple stories here lately as far as how the season's going to start, and just kind of the financials and how it's going to impact the offseason. For a while there, people were saying, oh, let's start in February, let's start in March, kind of give the teams that made the finals and teams that made a deep playoff runs a little bit of a rest. But the narrative's kind of switched here in the past, I'd say month or so, and they're trying to maybe start for a late December start for next season. The thing I've heard a lot about is just to keep the TV contracts kind of the same and not alter that sort of thing. And I think it's probably more a move to keep the owners happy, maybe not the players, because there's been some pushback from players, especially people on like the Lakers and the Heat, who just got done basically. They wanted a little bit more of a rest. Danny Green on the Lakers said that some veterans like himself, and he mentioned LeBron. I mean, LeBron hasn't said anything, but he said some veterans won't play if it starts too soon, because that's only about like an 8-week layoff, and they're used to more than that. But it'll be interesting to see if they push for that December start or if they end up going for February, March. I guess the way people were looking at it before when they said the February to March start was keeping the 2021-22 season, not next season, but the season after, making that back to normal, but next year be weird. I think they're going to try to get next year to be back on the normal schedule. So no kind of final decision on that yet, but we'll see how that all plays out. And then something that'll impact what we're talking about today, free agency, is that when I checked ESPN before we started recording, they had a story saying that NBA revenue dropped 10% this year. I mean, it's still $8.3 billion, but it dropped 10%. And obviously, coronavirus was a big factor in that, not having the ticket money from that, and kind of having to change the playoff structure and where they aired those games on TV. There was the whole thing with Daryl Morey kind of polarizing some fans in China at the beginning of the season. They said that was a factor. I don't know if it was as big as maybe they're making it, but he had a statement when there was kind of some unrest in Hong Kong early in the year that polarized some Chinese fans and could have caused a little bit of a downturn. But I guess the big thing that's going to come out of that is how the salary cap can be impacted. Usually that's based off of kind of league revenues and team revenues. And I think the figure they had in the ESPN story was that if they do base it off of this year, which is down 10%, the salary cap will basically be down 10% or maybe a little bit more too. I think if it followed that model, it would basically go from, I think it's like $109 million as a salary cap now to somewhere in the 90s, which may not sound like a lot when you're talking about millions, but that's probably one or two solid players on your team that you might not be able to pick up. So something to think about as we talk about free agents and as they kind of move along in the offseason, however long it's going to be, is just the whole financial part of this weird season that we just had.
Yeah, and so that might play a big part into players like Anthony Davis. Do they sign him to like a 1-year contract where maybe they paid him less, and then or they sign him to like a 3-year, and the first year they pay him less, and then the next 2 years he's stacked? I don't know how they're going to do it, but I mean, it's very interesting because it kind of stinks to be a free agent right now, because you might be taking some very, very low money for what you feel like you're worth in the market. And so we could see, and maybe the LA can't afford to give Anthony Davis the as much as they wanted to. And they're like, hey, like, we can't give it to you, but the first year we'll give you as much as we can, and then the second year and third year, whatever, we'll up it. And then another team comes along and says, no, we can give you exactly what you want. And then boom, now instead of him being on the Lakers, he's on a completely different team. And so it'll be interesting to see how this actually plays out and how much it actually has as far as the impact goes. Some other players on there that I kind of noted and wrote down. Fred VanVleet played for the Raptors, right? Hold on. Yeah, played for the Raptors, and he's another guy that played very, very well in the playoffs and might be finding a new home. Not sure. And speaking about the Raptors looking for a place to play in the United States, it seems. And I made the comment last week. Basically, I have NBA 2K, and I made a team that moved to Kansas City. And I kept saying, it'd be great for Kansas City to get a team. Kansas City deserves a team. It would be a solid team, and fans would love it. Fans in Kansas love their basketball. And so I made that comment, and then, 2 or 3 days later, Patrick Mahomes tweeted about it and kind of got on that bandwagon. I don't know if he saw me tweet or my series, but he wanted it to happen, and it sounds like the mayor of Kansas City is trying to actually make it happen. So Toronto might actually make it to Kansas City this year and play their NBA season. We'll have to find out if that's going to actually happen or not. But Fred VanVleet, another guy that is on that free agent list that could make a big impact. Another person is Christian Wood, Brandon Ingram, and then another big player is Hassan Whiteside. A lot of them could make pretty substantial impacts. I don't think anybody is going to make as big an impact as Anthony Davis, but I also don't know. Do you see him going anywhere but the Lakers? Do you think the Lakers are kind of are going to try to rebuild to win it, every year for the next couple of years while LeBron's still going?
Yeah, I haven't heard any reports about him wanting to leave. From everything I've heard, is basically he's gonna opt out of his contract, basically just so they can renegotiate and maybe come to something more meaningful for him. Maybe get him some more money. But everything I've heard, he wants to come back. I mean, I think he looks like he loves playing with LeBron, and I think they would probably move around some of their players anyway this offseason. I mean, they won the championship, but there's definitely still work that could be done to get people around LeBron and Anthony Davis. So they'd probably be cutting some people anyway, and just moving pieces and kind of switching up their salary cap anyway as far as where the money's going. So I think he'll stay put. There's not really a better situation, I think, for him right now. And there's not a ton of teams with cap space this year that could afford to get him. So I think he's staying put. As far as a lot of the other guys you mentioned, just kind of seems this year like there's Anthony Davis, but there's no really other stars. There's Anthony Davis. a couple of good quality starters and then a lot of role guys. I mean, VanVleet's a good quality starter, and him and Christian Wood, both of them are guys that they could probably benefit from their team getting rid of somebody. I think if Toronto got rid of Kyle Lowry, which I don't think they're planning on, I haven't heard anything about it, but I think if they got rid of Kyle Lowry and let Fred VanVleet lead the offense a little bit more, he could kind of explode there in Toronto. So depending on what they want to do as a team, that might impact what he wants to do in the offseason, but could definitely be a quality starter for anybody in the league. Christian Wood, kind of an up-and-coming guy, is playing for the Pistons now, has been kind of a role player, a bench guy until this year, and he kind of took off this year and caught the attention of a lot of people. If the Pistons decided to move Blake Griffin somewhere, which is a real possibility just because he has a huge contract, they might want to get off of that. He could see an increase in his stats and his production and things like that. Brandon Ingram is an intriguing young guy you mentioned. I think he'll probably stay put. I think they want to keep that core around him and Zion and Lonzo Ball to an extent kind of stable for at least a little bit until they see how those guys interact with each other and what they kind of have going forward. And then Hassan Whiteside, I'm not really too high on. I mean, he still gets a lot of his stats like blocks and some of the defensive stats, but it just doesn't ever seem like he makes teams that much better. Maybe early in his career he did, but now it just kind of seems like he's out there to get his stats and not much more. So yeah, it's kind of maybe not a boring year in free agency, but not as much activity or switching teams as we normally see. And some of these, like I said, high quality starters or maybe role player guys could make a difference for teams that are already in contention or are one or two pieces away. But there's not going to be like a big three that really forms anywhere, or a couple moves that are going to change a team that was way out of the playoffs to a championship contender. I don't think that's going to happen, besides maybe Golden State, but I don't think they have a lot of cap space. So not going to be as much moves this year as probably what there has been.
And speaking about moves, the next sport, I guess, that's going to make the biggest moves is going to be the MLB. And last night, LA won, 3-1, 4-1, I think. And they took the series and won the World Series for the first time since 1988, which is about 32 years ago. God, that makes you feel old. And so they finally got their win. They've been building this for, 5 years now? They've had really good, solid teams, and they just weren't able to do it this year. Able to do it. Heard a lot of people talking about, asterisks being next to it. But I don't know. I felt like they were the best team all year, and I felt like, it could have changed in 160 some games compared to the 80 that they played. But LA was clearly the best team, and I think some of the teams that actually made the playoffs and actually made runs in the playoffs wouldn't have even been in the playoffs if it was a full season. So I don't really see there being an asterisk next to this World Series. And the biggest thing I'm happy with is that Kershaw finally gets his ring, and super happy for him. I mean, he's been just a Cy Young guy every single season for the past 10 years, and just has not been on the winning team. He stuck with them. He stayed with them. He's done his job, and finally they're able to put enough people around him to get him that World Series win.
Yeah, I wasn't really surprised either. I think we both picked the Dodgers as maybe not a World Series favorite, but one of the better teams in the league even before the season started, and definitely had the most talent. Mookie Betts definitely made a big impact, and I think if you talk to a lot of Dodgers fans, they probably say he's worth it, at least at this point, to get that World Championship ring. And yeah, I guess I probably see them maybe coming back next year and being a favorite as well. And there was kind of a couple stories that came out of last night that were surprising, and I guess the story that kind of overshadowed almost even the Dodgers winning it was Blake Snell, the pitcher for the Rays, got pulled. He had only given up 2 hits, I think, at that point, something like that. He was about 70 pitches, had 9 strikeouts, and got pulled for 2 hits. What did you think when you saw that and kind of the backlash to that?
Well, I kind of had the same backlash. I tweeted on mine that I don't know how the coach Kevin Cash would ever think that this is a good idea. Snell gave up a hit to the number 9 guy, which that's not a good thing. But first of all, it was a good pitch. Second of all, it's only his second hit given up. He's had 9 Ks through two times facing the Dodger hitters. Not to mention the next 3 guys up, he struck them all out twice already in the game. So he struck them out twice every single at bat for the next 3 guys, and it's the best 3 guys on the roster for the Dodgers. And they pull him, their best pitcher out, and they put in a guy that's given up a run in his last 6 appearances. And so I legit just don't understand. I don't know if he just was like, I don't really want to win tonight, so I'm going to pull out our best pitcher and put in one of the worst pitchers we have playing right now and see if he can screw it up for me because I want my name blasted everywhere. I don't know. I legit don't know and understand why you would ever do it. You can argue about the pitch count or anything. 70 pitches is nothing. 70 pitches and 9 strikeouts. So I don't get it. Legit don't get it. Snell was just roasting that offense. And if they kept Snell in, he would have pitched a complete game. Maybe not a shutout, but he would have pitched a complete game. And they probably would have won 1-0. So, we could say that now because we know what happens in the end. Another thing that really surprised me was not really Corey Seager winning the MVP. It was just that there was so much, I guess, stats-wise, yes, he deserves to win it. He won it. That's great. But I think the biggest impact in the whole World Series was Mookie Betts. And he played well. His stats were great. They weren't as good as Seager's were. But I feel like he was the player that kept showing up in big times and kept doing everything right. And so I was actually really surprised that he didn't get it just because of his name and what he's done. And I think Seager does actually deserve to win it based on stats and how he played. But I was kind of surprised that Betts actually didn't get the MVP.
Yeah, I was too, just because of kind of the attitude adjustment, I guess I'll call it, that he's provided to the Dodgers this year and everything he's meant to them and kind of being able to push them over the top. I thought he'd be up there as far as MVP candidates as well. But like you said, stats might have been able to push Corey Seager over the top. And really, any of their younger guys you probably could have given the award to, and I think most people would have been fine with. But like you said, good for Corey Seager, good for Clayton Kershaw. I agree with you there that he's been great for a long time, and you never know how much longer players are going to have. So it's really good for him to finally get his World Series ring and kind of get that monkey off of his back. And probably I think he feels happy, but probably also feels relieved at this point to just have people stop saying, he can't ever win a big game, he can't ever win the World Series, and now he can finally put that to bed forever. And kind of like you talked about earlier, I don't know if I agree with the asterisk thing. I think this is a legitimate title for him and the rest of the Dodgers. They succeeded in kind of the hand they were dealt, and same thing for the Lakers as well. Maybe it was an easier path for both these teams than what it could have been, but they succeeded with the circumstances they are given. So feel good for all these guys. I know some people aren't Dodgers fans. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other on them, but just kind of good to see a champion and some of these guys who have been playing the game for a long time finally get some recognition in the win they want so badly.
And speaking of championships, the NFL looking strong halfway through the season now. We're kind of seeing how teams are rounding out. We got a few last week, I believe, when we talked. We had 3 unbeaten teams. Now we only have 1, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not really. I wouldn't say I was surprised. I was actually more surprised. I watched the game, and they were up, I believe, 24-7 or 24-0 at some point, and they almost gave it up. And their offense was clicking on all cylinders, and I've said it multiple times on this podcast. I don't understand why teams shy away from their game plan, because I see them running, throwing. I mean, everything was working. And then they get up by like 24 points, and then, yeah, I know that the defense makes adjustments. I get that. But they're up 24-0 or 24-7, whatever they were blowing the Titans out. And then all of a sudden, here come the Titans back, and the Steelers just basically started running it up the middle and seemed like they are wasting time. They're throwing like deep in shot and taking shots when, I mean, I don't understand why they would. It'd be like a 2nd and 6, and they would throw to the end zone. It's like, I mean, you're getting your yards. Just keep getting first downs. And so I don't know if they're going for like the kill shot or something, but they're able to end up pulling it out. It was definitely a lot closer than it should have been. The Steelers were definitely the better team, but props to the Titans for coming back. And the Steelers are going to be the last unbeaten team in the season, and I was impressed by their first half performance, but after that I started to get a little worried, and I worry that this 6-0 or their undefeated season will soon be coming to an end. But speaking about halfway through the season, what do you think about the NFL? What are some teams that you're impressed about? Some teams that you're worried about? What do you think about halfway through the season?
Yeah, just kind of to stay on the Steelers train, I guess they're one of my surprises. I mean, I knew they had a good defense, but Roethlisberger's getting up there in age, and you never know how much longer he's going to have before the wheels fall off, I guess. I guess they're surprising in their record, but when you look at the teams they played, maybe not so surprising. They played the Giants the first week, who are terrible. Denver, not great. Houston, disappointment. We'll talk about them. And Philadelphia was their first 4 games. So kind of got a favorable schedule to start out the season. They've played 2 good teams in the past 2 weeks and put up wins, so I'm not going to say they're not deserving of being 6-0. They beat Cleveland by 31 points. Cleveland's a solid team. And then Tennessee's, like you said, been a solid team all year. They do have a tough test coming up this weekend. They go to Baltimore to play, so you might see their unbeaten streak in this week. If it doesn't, they got a couple easy games after that, but then they face Baltimore again in about a month. So do have some chances there to probably see their unbeaten streak come to an end. Some surprises in a good way. We'll kind of maybe go from good surprises to bad surprises. Cardinals, that was one team we both agreed that are surprising, and I guess I'm not surprised maybe that they're in contention. I thought they'd be good, and I mean, if you want to go back and listen to my rant on DeAndre Hopkins and what I thought he could do, you can go back and listen to some of our other podcasts. I thought he'd make an impact, but maybe I didn't think they'd be this good yet. They have a talented division, which is something we'll go over in our next podcast. But Cardinals are really in contention, I think, at the top of their division, basically. The Browns at 5-2, they're a team that people have been on for the past couple of years as far as getting Baker Mayfield. They have Myles Garrett, getting Odell Beckham Jr., even though he's hurt now. People have kind of been waiting for them to pop, and this definitely might be the year. They're starting to show what they're made of and seem to be out to a good, strong start. And then a team that's at 500 but is still kind of surprising is the Dolphins. And we hit on them a little bit last week, so may not mention as much about them, but they've kind of just beaten the teams that they should beat and lost to teams that are better than them. So they're doing basically everything you could ask of them. And changing to Tua, we'll see how that goes. We'll see if it makes an impact and if they start kind of declining again and maybe go back to Fitzpatrick, or if it kind of keeps them on an upward trajectory. I'm not sure which way that's going to go yet. Do you have any other teams that you're thinking about as far as good surprises so far this season?
No, I feel like that's most of them. The reason I'm actually impressed by the Dolphins is because last year they were just absolutely awful. I mean, just absolutely awful. One of the worst teams. This year, they seem to be about, like a 500 team, a team that, I don't know, might be able to make the playoffs in a wild card. Who knows? And so their defense is a lot better than they were last year. Their offense seems to be figuring it out. Again, don't know why they're switching quarterbacks right now, but that's a whole nother rant for a whole nother day. The Browns 5-2. It seems like they're last week they lost, and they're people are throwing a fit about Baker, and oh, here he goes again, he's screwing up, and then he comes out in the first quarter, and I believe he throws for like 0 yards with an interception and 0 for 4. And people are like, see, yep, Baker sucks. And then he ends up throwing for like, I don't even know, a godly amount of yards. He threw for 5 touchdowns, and this is all without Odell Beckham Jr., who got injured. They have Nick Chubb, who's out on the IR right now. So they're starting best wide receiver, they're starting best running back, both out on injuries, yet they're still finding ways to win. They came back last week and got a win, which is just really impressive on how they did it. And I mean, yeah, it was against the Bengals, who are another team that the Bengals are 1-5-1, but they were down by a lot, and they came back and slowly just chipped in, and then finally got it. And if you look at their 2 losses, yeah, they were blowout losses, but they were to the Ravens and the Steelers, both of which are 2 of the best football teams in the league. So you kind of look at the Browns, you kind of look at the Dolphins, and you look at them and just say, yeah, they're beating the teams they should be beating. And that's ultimately basically all you can ask of any team, is to beat the teams they should beat. And yeah, if you don't beat, it's kind of like if a college football team is in a really bad or a really good conference like the Big 12, and Kansas plays usually cupcakes at the beginning of the season. They should beat those teams. So if they win their first 3 games against cupcakes, then I would consider that, if they win those 3 games and then they lose the rest against Big 12 opponents, I would actually consider that a good season, because they played better and beat the teams they were supposed to beat. And that's, I feel like, all you can ask for any team. And I feel like the Dolphins and Browns have done that. Now, some teams that have not done that are the Texans at 1-6, the Vikings at 1-5, and the Falcons at 1-5. All 3 of these teams I thought would be at 500 or actually better at this point in the season. Looking at their schedules, they're just not beating anybody. We've talked about the Falcons giving up huge leads, and it's kind of just like an inevitable thing. Like, they're just going to do it. The Texans, it sounds like the coach has lost the players in that whole organization. And then you look at the Vikings and you just wonder what the heck is going on. Yeah, it's a lot of defensive problems, but their offense is a lot better than what they're playing like. Their offense, I mean, yeah, Dalvin Cook got injured for a couple weeks there, but their offense is just, I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily Kirk Cousins' fault, but they got a rookie who's just tearing it up right now, Justin Jefferson, who has 28 receptions, 3 touchdowns, 537 yards, one of the best young receivers in the game, and they just can't win games. Their only victory was the Texans, which the Texans have only won 1 too. So they played the Packers, the Colts, Titans, Seahawks, and then they just lost to the Falcons. So it's kind of like these Texans, Vikings, and Falcons are just going to get wins against each other, and that might be the only wins they get this year.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of just looking forward for a lot of those teams and who they played so far, I guess. Houston might have a chance to turn it around. They had a really tough start to the season as far as the teams they were lined up against. Played Kansas City week 1, Baltimore week 2, Pittsburgh week 3, and then Tennessee and Green Bay the past couple weeks. So they have a chance to kind of turn it around here in the next couple weeks with Jacksonville, New England, Detroit. So they have a chance to maybe turn around and maybe not make the playoffs, but just have a respectable into the season. Minnesota is definitely my disappointment for the year if I had to pick one team, just because I expected them to compete for the division title, to kind of compete with the Packers and for the NFC North. And like you said, they're just, I don't know, keep finding ways to lose, even against teams they should beat. And might be time for me to kind of sell my Viking stock. I was going to try to ride with them and see if they could pull things out and kind of turn around, but just doesn't look like it's going that way. Still probably will keep Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson on my fantasy team because they're still getting production, but just not leading to wins. And Atlanta, I mean, we've talked about them plenty, just giving up big leads and maybe not having that killer instinct. And the Texans did have a change in leadership with Bill O'Brien getting fired. Atlanta could see them have a change in leadership here before too long and kind of turn things maybe not around, but just get on a different path. And Minnesota, I guess I just don't see really a move for them that they can end up making to switch things. So Houston, I think, has a chance to maybe turn around, but the other two teams, I don't see things getting back to normal or even close to what we thought they were going to do at the start of the season.
Yeah, and so, I mean, we'll have to wait again, see how things play out. I do want to let you know that we are doing a separate podcast that will be coming out sometime this week, maybe in the next couple days, where we're going to go over all of the NFL teams and stuff and kind of talk more about each team individually as we are halfway through the season. We wanted to do one after week 6. Week 4. Yeah, week 4, week 8, week 12, and then week 16. But we weren't able to get it done in week 4. So we're doing week 8. We're going to try to do week 12 and then week 16 and just talk about how everything's going, kind of compare it to what we thought at the beginning of the season and kind of, things along the way as we go. The last thing we're going to talk about is the fantasy recap. And let's talk about your team first, Mark.
Okay, yeah, not a great week for me. I mean, I performed okay. My team did kind of what they should have done and scored 142 points, which in our league is usually enough to at least compete, maybe even win. But the team I faced got 205 points, so I kind of got blown out there, and they definitely had some standout performers. The other team had Kyler Murray, who went off for 46 points this week, Devontae Adams, who had 44 points, and a couple other guys here and there that went way above what they're supposed to get. So kind of just an average week for my guys and a great week for the other team, I guess I'll say. The only really move I could have made, I had a lot of guys on a bye week. Adam Thielen was on a bye week. Justin Jefferson was on a bye week. So a couple potential starters there. And Aaron Jones didn't play. So a couple potential starters there that I couldn't have done anything about. Only move I could have made was playing Aaron Rodgers instead of Josh Allen, which I've talked about it before on these podcasts. That's kind of debate for me week to week. Both these guys have started out the year hot, and kind of just depends who they're playing if I want to put them in. So putting Aaron Rodgers would have been about the only good move that I could have made that would have made any sort of difference. But I just got beat out this week pretty bad. Looking forward to kind of this upcoming week. Some big players that I have kind of questions about. Aaron Jones is still questionable with an injury. Buffalo's defense, not sure if I should do anything with them. They had a tough time against a bad Jets team this week, so might have to make a move there. Again, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, they're pretty close in total points, so not sure which direction I'll go there. I think I moved Rodgers into the starting lineup to start out with, but we'll see how that goes. But I think there's a chance for me to kind of rebound this week and get back to normal. How'd you do this week?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, honestly, if you would have played pretty much any other team, you would have won this week. So nothing to be mad about that. I actually scored less points than you, but got the win. Scored 135, and basically my reason for winning is the reason I've won pretty much all my games, and that's Russell Wilson going off for 41 points. Ended up tearing it up. Even with the 3 interceptions, he still had 41 points. Terry McLaurin had 22 for me. Chris Godwin had 23, but again, he's injured, so I think he broke his finger or some crap. So, going to have to figure something out there. DJ Chark, who's played very well all year, just did not do anything this week. 3.6 points for him. Todd Gurley did well, 22 for him. Chris Carson injured. only had 5 points for me there. And then tight end, I had Evan Ingram. And then on the bench, I had Michael Thomas still injured. Michael Gallup doesn't seem like any Dallas players know how to play anymore. Had Dalvin Cook out on a bye, but he's also been injured. Mark Andrews out on a bye. And then I got Nick Chubb on the IR. And Jarvis Landry scored 11. Kicker, Zerline for Dallas. Obviously, he's the only player that did anything last week and scored 5 points for me. And then I got the crappy New Orleans defense. I don't know why I keep throwing them out there. I guess I think, hey, they'll figure it out. They're good, right? Not the case.
I think I had them. I think I had them early in the season, and may have gotten rid of them. They're just not living up to expectations.
Yeah, so I did make a change there. Went out and got Indianapolis' defense. They're playing very, very well. I believe they're the third best, maybe fourth best defense in the league right now. And they got Detroit this week, and Detroit's hit and miss. So we'll see what they do. And then I made some changes. I actually went out and got Cole Beasley because my wide receivers seem to change every week. I got Godwin out. I got Michael Thomas that might be out. So 2 of my top picks are out already. Nick Chubb on the IR. So I'm just dealing with a bunch of injuries and just trying to patch a team together to try to get the win. I do play the worst team in the league, and so hopefully I can end up pulling out a win here. Hopefully Russell Wilson can carry me to the promised lands. But I also went out and got Kupp. I'm surprised Kupp was on the free agents and went out and grabbed him. Mark Andrews is back. Dalvin Cook's supposed to be back. So we'll wait and see. My team's looking a little better than they were last week, even though I got the win.
I think that'll about wrap it up for us. Thank you to everybody for listening. We appreciate all our listeners that we have, and thank you for subscribing. If you're listening and haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's on Apple, Spotify, all the other podcast apps that you may have, or on our YouTube channel. You can watch or listen to our podcast there. You can find that by searching Slacker Sports Show. And then you can also follow us on Twitter to get updates on us and links to our podcast and how to download that by searching @Slackers Sports on Twitter.